Hello everyone. We are going to do the first class of electrostatics today. In electrostatics, we will begin with Coulomb's law. Now, Coulomb's law is the electrical analog of Newton's law of gravitation. In Coulomb's law, what we do is that we consider two charged bodies and we actually uh, we actually consider two charged bodies which are of point size. Now, what exactly do you mean by point size charged bodies? What it means is that when the actual size of the body is very small compared to the distance between them, so that is when we can consider them as charged bodies. So, if you have two charged bodies having charges q1 and q2 separated by a distance r, then there was a scientist called Coulomb who investigated that the force between these two charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitude of the charges. Secondly, he found that the force was inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the charges. So, the direct proportionality is with the magnitude of the product of the two charges, and the inverse proportionality is with the square of the distance between the two charges. And if you write it as an equation, then it looks like this: F is equal to K, which is a constant of proportionality, into, now remember we are talking about the magnitude of the product of the magnitude of the two charges. So therefore you can put a modulus sign, q1 q2 is in the modulus, and divided by r square, because it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Now, if we are following SI system, which is what we do most of the time, then the force will be measured in newtons, the distance r will be measured in meters, and each of the two charges will be measured in coulombs. And in that case, the value of k, it turns out to be 9 into 10 to the power 9. So this is the value of k. So the value of k is 9 into 10 to the power 9. So obviously what is going to be the unit? It will be Newton meter square per coulomb square. So 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per coulomb square is the value of k. Incidentally, this constant k, does it have any physical manifestation? It does. Actually, the constant k is found to be equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. And you understand that 1, 4 and pi are all constant. Epsilon naught is called the permittivity of free space, which literally means permittivity of vacuum. Permittivity has to do with the electrical properties of any medium. You are aware that vacuum is perfectly non-conducting, but every medium has got a permittivity, and the permittivity of vacuum or free space is referred to as epsilon naught. So the constant of proportionality k, it happens to be equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught, where epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space. Remember that at the outset we are considering that these two charges are in vacuum. So is it necessary? So it's written over here, you can see in this portion that the charges are in vacuum. So is it necessary that the charges have to be in vacuum? Not at all. The charges could be in a medium other than vacuum. In that case, epsilon naught will be replaced by the permittivity of that particular medium. So as of now, we are going to restrict our discussion to vacuum. So this epsilon naught, again in SI system, has got a value which is 8.854 into 10 to the power minus 12, and you can see the unit coulomb square per Newton per meter square. So this is the value and the unit of epsilon naught. Now, when you are applying Coulomb's law, during application, you will find that most of the time you are having to deal with this figure and not this figure. In fact, this figure is basically something which is a physical constant for vacuum, and it has a physical interpretation, that is, it tells us something about the electrical properties of vacuum. So I'll just give you a simple example, like the permittivity of water. You know that water is a uh, polar solvent, but then again water is not considered conducting, but it is a polar solvent, and therefore its permittivity is found to be 80 times that of vacuum, right? So every medium has some electrical properties, and permittivity relates with the electrical properties of that medium. And just as an example, I'm telling you that the permittivity of water is 80 times of epsilon naught, that is 80 times the value corresponding to vacuum. So the point is that when you're doing any application of Coulomb's law, this value is the one which we use most of the time, 9 into 10 to the power 9. As you might expect, this value is a little bit difficult to deal with. Moreover, there is a 4 pi in the denominator. So all in all, I would say that for numericals, etc., this value is a better value to use. However, you should be knowing this value also, because this relates with the physical properties of air, whereas this is a calculated value and therefore it doesn't really have any physical manifestation. Okay, now you understand that Coulomb's law deals with a force, and you know that every force is a vector quantity. So there are two possibilities. If Q1 and Q2 are similar charges, then the force will be repulsive. You can see that I have shown the force arrows to be pointing away from the two charges. On the other hand, if Q1 and Q2 are they are opposite charges, in that case the force will be attractive. You can see that I have shown the forces to be pointing towards the charges. So if Q1 into Q2, the product is positive, that means Q1 Q2 are both charges of the same kind, that is both positive or both negative. In that case the forces will be repulsive. And if Q1 into Q2 the product is negative, that means Q1 and Q2 are of opposite sign, and therefore the forces will be, as you can see, attractive. Now, do we really need to get into this? Do we really need to get into this vector aspect of the force? Well, at times it is necessary. By and large, if you go back to gravitation law and recall that there weren't too many questions where we use the vector form of gravitation law. For the most part, the scalar form, which is the very well known g m1 m2 by r square, for the most part this was sufficient. But yes, there were a few questions where the vector form, in case you don't remember, this is how the vector form of gravitation law looks. You multiply gm1 m2 by r cube with a unit vector in the which is along the line joining the two masses. So let's understand how the vector form of Coulomb's law is going to be like. So suppose the force which is acting on charge number 2, if I call it as F21, so this is vector F21. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to write the scalar value of the force 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by r square. Now I'll do one thing, I'll create a unit vector and I'll call it R21 cap, and you see how R21 cap is pointing, as you can see. So R21 cap is pointing in the same direction as F21. So R21 cap is a unit vector in the direction of F21, and therefore all I need to do is I need to write vector force, right, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q1 Q2 by r square, which is a scalar calculation, into r cap 21, which is a unit vector in the direction of F21. And by the way, r cap 21 is basically a unit vector, you can say, along the line joining the two charges. In a similar manner, if you were to investigate F12, right, so in that case this would be the vector calculation for vector F12. It will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by r square. Incidentally, whether you write R12 square or R21 square, it doesn't really matter, because magnitude wise R12, R21 both are the same. By the way, what is R12? You can see that R12, okay, it's not there in this figure. but R12 will be a vector pointing the other way, like it will be pointing from F2 towards F1. So naturally, because you are calculating F12 with the help of R cap 12, which is oppositely directed to R cap 21, so F12 will be the negative of F21. So this completes a vector discussion of Coulomb's law. It's very simple, it's very basic. All you need to do is you just need to understand one thing, that you have to fix a unit vector, right? You may do that arbitrarily or you may do it in a specific manner, that is your choice. But whatever unit vector you fix, once you have fixed it, you will have to maintain all your calculations according to that. For instance, here I have taken the direction of R cap 21 as positive, so automatically the direction of R cap 12 becomes negative, which is why there is a minus F21 which is equal to F12. So what I'm trying to tell you excuse me, is that I could have well taken R cap 12 as positive. I could have done that, but I took R cap 21 as positive. Okay. Now we come to the electrical analog of field. You remember that there was this concept of gravitational field, and in case you don't readily remember, gravitational field is something which is produced by any astronomical body around it, and that is responsible for exerting a force on some other body. Similarly, we say that if you have a charge, let's say capital Q, and let's say that at a particular location, say capital P, such that the position vector of P with respect to capital Q is vector R. So in that case, we can say that the charge capital Q, which was initially placed at the origin, we say that it produces an electric field everywhere in its surrounding, and therefore the charge small q, which we now bring to the location capital P, will have a force exerted upon it by capital Q. Now we know how to find the force, right, on small q due to capital Q, but what we are actually interested in is finding the field. Now to find the field, what you need to do is you need to momentarily take the charge small q as a unit positive charge. If you take small q as a unit positive charge, then in the calculation of force, you will not have any small q at all, because it has been taken as a unit positive charge. So you will get 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square into r cap. Okay, r cap is what? R cap, I have taken it as a unit vector from the origin to the location of the point P. So what exactly is r cap mathematically speaking? It is basically vector r divided by r, right? So this is r cap. So essentially, to find the electric field at a point, I just need to visualize that there is a unit positive charge at that point, and I need to find the force on it, and the force on it, it is called the electric field at that point. So basically what happens is if I know the field, right, and I need to find the force, what I need to do is I just need to multiply this field with the charge, and what is that charge? Small q. So let's summarize this discussion, whatever we have discussed till now. So we were saying that there is a charge capital Q which is placed at the origin, and there is a specific location P whose position vector with respect to the origin is vector r, and we need to find the electric field at the point P due to the charge capital Q. The capital Q charge will produce an electric field all around it, and that electric field is given by this formula. So you can see it's a vector, of course it is, because it is a force, but what kind of a force? Force acting on a unit positive charge placed at that point. So I need to momentarily visualize that small q is a unit positive charge, and in Coulomb's law, if I put small q equal to 1 coulomb, this will be the field, and during that representation because I'm using the vector representation, I need to fix a unit vector as I told you earlier, and that unit vector is the vector which is directed from O to P, which basically means that unit vector which is r cap is actually vector r divided by the magnitude of vector r. So this is the concept of electric field. Now in order to find the force on the charge small q which I am going to place at the point P, that I just need to multiply it with the field. So whatever the value of field I got, if I just multiply that with small q, then I'll get the force, and therefore this is the force, right? So basically you might say that this is the representation for the relation between force and field. So the force is F vector, the field is E vector, and it is force is nothing but charge multiplied by the field. So this is what I have written over here. Okay. So I think what we now need to do is we now need to have a formal definition for electric field. So it's written over here at the bottom. The electric field due to a charge q at a point in space may be defined as the force that a unit positive charge will experience if placed at that point, right? So the charge capital Q which was placed at the origin is called the source charge, and the charge small q which was placed at the point P is called a test charge. Now remember, we later on in our computation we took momentarily small q to be a unit positive charge, we took it to be 1 coulomb, but to be honest that is mathematically correct, but physically there is a flaw. The flaw is that if you have a charge like 1 coulomb in the vicinity of capital Q, then there is a possibility that capital Q itself may get disturbed, because 1 coulomb is a significant amount of charge. So capital Q itself may get disturbed. So the definition of electric field, which is both mathematically and physically correct, is this one. So you find out the force on a charge small q divided by small q, right, and take the limit when small q tends to 0. That means instead of saying that there is a unit positive charge at the point P, you say that I am taking a charge q, finding the force on it, and then dividing that force by the charge small q. So what is the advantage? The advantage is that small q, it is in your control. You can easily say that it is a charge of very small magnitude, and therefore it will not disturb capital Q. So this definition of electric field seems to be both mathematically as well as physically correct, right? Okay, now we are going to move on to another aspect of electric field, that is electric field lines. You see, electric field lines are curves drawn in such a way that the tangent at any point gives the direction of the field at that particular point. And generally what we do is that we tend to put an arrow, right? So the arrow will give us the direction of the field, and this particular direction will be the direction of the force acting on a unit positive charge placed at that point. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we need to just have a look at some diagrams of electric field lines to get an idea. See, this is the diagram for electric field lines due to isolated positive charge. So there is a isolated positive charge Q, it's a positive charge, and if you place a 1 coulomb anywhere, it will experience a repulsion. So you can see all these arrows, they are pointing away from the charge small q. Likewise, if Q is a negative charge, you can see that all these lines are pointing towards the negative charge, right? If you have two positive charges facing each other like this, then this is how the field lines will look, right? So in all cases, remember, the way to draw the field lines is very simple. You take a point in space and visualize, for instance, this point. What will be the direction of a unit positive charge which is placed over there? If you cannot visualize, then of course you'll have to mathematically calculate it, right? but in some places it's pretty easy, like for example over here right behind Q, obviously the force will be in this direction. Similarly, if you have plus Q and minus Q facing each other like this, then the field lines will look like this. One thing which is very clear from all the diagrams, that the field lines always seems to begin from positive charge and end at negative charge, right? So if there is a single charge, they may start or end at infinity. So you can see that this is the diagram. So the field line is starting out from the positive charge. Look at this diagram, the field lines are entering into the negative charge. Now, in a charge-free region, electric field lines can be taken to be continuous curves without any breaks. So you are not going to have any kind of breaks or disruptions in the field lines. The field lines are always going to be smooth, continuous curves. You can look at any one of these field lines, they are always going to be smooth, continuous curves, right? Thirdly, two field lines will never intersect each other, because if they did, what it would mean is you can put a 1 coulomb charge over there and expect the force on it to have two different directions simultaneously, which is absolutely absurd. So two field lines cannot intersect. That is number 3. Number 4, the field lines, they never form closed loops. Now this is pretty obvious, because in point number 1 we have said that they always emanate from a positive charge and they always enter into a negative charge. So there is no way you can have a closed loop, because that would mean that it starts from this point and ends at the same point, which is impossible. So these are the various properties of field lines, and it's also written over here that they cannot form closed loop, follows from the conservative nature of electric field. Now this is a thing which you need to remember, that any conservative force like gravitation, spring force, electrostatic force is conservative in nature, and the field lines corresponding to it will never be closed loops, right? So magnetic field lines can form closed loops because they are non-conservative. Electric field lines will not form closed loops because they are conservative. So on that note, we complete the PDF of electrostatics 1, this particular sheet, electrostatics 1. Thank you all. Thanks a lot.